Good evening, everybody. I'm Josh. I'm an alcoholic. Sorry, I stutter a little bit. I get really worked up and I speak really fast, so hopefully she can keep up. So, Alcoholics Anonymous is wonderful. I owe my life to Alcoholics Anonymous. I actually just celebrated 7 years 2 days ago. I have a sponsor. I sponsor others. I have a home group. I do service work. I do the deal, It's beautiful. So I'm not from here. I'm from Maryland originally. I've been here about 10 years. I come from a very small town. It's like the Amish country. I think my town has like 3,500 people in it. It's very small. It had a blinking light until I was like 15, and then it turned into a red light, and then, my alcoholism, it's a lot of it's my mentality, right? And when I'm younger, right, alcohol and drugs are a vessel I use for my solution, right? They weren't even really a problem. It was the consequences of what it brought into my life, And that's just over and over again my entire life. I tried to build it up, I burn it down. I try to build it up, I burn it down, right? So I'm going to tell you guys all about that. I'm a little nervous. So I started drinking and doing stuff at a very young age. There really wasn't much to do in my town, and it was very normal, right? My whole family is just like me. All my siblings exactly like me. It's kind of squeaky. I did not graduate high school at all. I was a very bad kid. My grandfather, he was sort of like my dad, like my whole childhood. But then when he died, I was in the 5th grade. It just went downhill, I can see alcoholism in my life far before I even started drinking, right? Remember, say, the 6th grade. I used to purposely miss the school bus so my mom would take me to school so I could have somebody to hang out with, right? I didn't want to be by myself, all this stuff, right? And I would do that type of stuff, right? And she would leave for work and I'd be mad, right? I'm just like, what am I supposed to do? I just was uncomfortable with just being alone by myself, right? Now, when I got introduced to drugs and alcohol, I didn't need anybody else, right? It talks about in the big book, I don't need human resource. I don't need nothing, right? I don't need materials. I don't need people. I don't need anything, right? That stuff is a solution in my life, right? And when I finally discovered that, I chased that till the end. I remember we went on a camping trip when I was 11 or 12. This was the first time I actually drank. I don't even know if I got drunk or not, but and I went, when I was a kid, I was very short, very fat, and I stuttered uncontrollably. I actually failed school because of it, because I just would not talk, right? The school projects and stuff, wouldn't talk, wouldn't do it, would just nothing, right? And we stole some beer from the older people that were there, and we ran off to the playground, and I smashed some Smirnoffs, and I realized that I'm not that uncomfortable, and I didn't need people, right? I would just go off by myself and sit on a slide and be completely content, not a worry in the world, right? And again, I chased that for the rest of my life, right? Until I actually got sober. I graduated through the ranks very rapidly. By the time I was 15, 16, I was a freshman in high school, and I was tired of going to school sick. I just was like, screw this, I'm just going to quit, A lot of kids, when they were younger, they wanted to be like firefighters or astronauts or whatever like that, right? I wanted to be like a drug dealer. That was my whole path of my life. That's what I wanted to be, right? So my older brother, he's 5 years older than me, so everything he was doing, I was doing, right? So when he's 13 smoking weed for the first time, I'm 9 doing that for the first time. When he's 16, 17 drinking for the first time, he thinks it's hilarious to make me do shots of vodka at house parties when I'm 11 or 12, right? And so I tried to follow his path. And that's the stuff that he was doing, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be just like him. Because again, I was short, fat, stuttered. I didn't like myself and my brother. I thought he was the most handsome guy in the world. Now I'm way more handsome than he is. He didn't age well. And like I said, all my siblings were just like me. So it was me, my brother, his girlfriend, my sister, her boyfriend, all living in my mom's house. And we were all doing the same stuff, right? And when I quit school, like I said, my ambition was just to do what I wanted. And, I've had that, I have arrived moments many times in my life, and that was one of them. I was sitting in my mom's driveway selling pounds of weed and just drinking beer with my friends all day, shooting basketball. And if I could have lived like that the rest of my life, I would have been content. But it doesn't work out that way, because I tell people all the time, if I could just snap my fingers and everybody in the world just disappear, I would be fine, right? And I could just do what I want. I'd be completely content, right? Because nobody would bother me. I wouldn't have to deal with any people, nothing, no emotions, no nothing. I just live my life, right? But unfortunately, it's not like that. And I have to deal with people on a daily basis, like my mom, dealing with a 16-year-old a-hole kid in their driveway, right? When I tried to go to military school. My mom tried to send me to military school. I made it like 2 weeks, and I went AWOL and left. And then she was like, this was like the end of the line, man. Her boyfriend had like 12 years left and like all this stuff. And now I'm older, I can look back and I can blame 100% of like a lot of bad stuff that happened to other people on myself. And, and I can see that now, when I was 17, it was about 2 weeks before my 18th birthday. And so my brother was moving back and forth to Ocean City a lot. And he would go there every summer. He would work. And then he would come back to Cecil County in the winter. And then we'd hang out. And then it was just a rinse and repeat. And then my mom was like, well, Josh, why don't you go with him? I said, well, I'm only 17. I was like, you're supposed to take care of me, She's like, well, here's $500. It was sort of like a severance package. It was like, get out of my house, right? And when she did that, and the only reason she wanted everybody out, right? Because all of us were in the house just not paying bills, like nothing, right? And I'm the youngest. So I was like, well, okay, she gave me $500. This is cool. So I went to the beach with my brother, and I didn't know anybody there, right? I was too young to go to bars. I couldn't do anything. I got a job at a pizza shop on the boardwalk. I was working like 85 hours a week. So the only other thing I could do when I got off work was just drink, right? Because the other stuff in Ocean City was non-existent, right? And my brother would pick me up a fifth of Svek of vodka, probably 3 or 4 times a week, and I would just drink that till I went to sleep every night, until I could start going to bars. Because we would do this every summer, right? I'd move back home. I would destroy my life. I would run to the beach thinking this is like a utopia. I'm going to live there. This is cool. I'm making like $8 an hour, working like 1 million hours a week. It's just crazy. I didn't save any money at all. I spent all of it. I started getting arrested when I was 18. When I was living there, I ended up buying a 1991 Honda hatchback. It was my first car. I built it in my driveway. I was so proud of it. I bought a motor off my brother for not money, for other things. And this motor had like 500,000 miles on it. And I put it in this car. I was so proud. I was like, this is amazing, right? And I get pulled over in it in Ocean City. My brother leaves a tin can underneath my seat. And they said the drug dog smelled it, but it's impossible. There was like a stem inside of it, right? And they arrested me for it. I'm like, this is crazy, right? But as soon as that process started happening, those consequences started happening, it was just a snowball effect. I was getting arrested like 3 or 4 times a year consecutively, like just nonstop, I got put on probation when I was 18, and that just didn't stop. I was on probation until I was 26. It was not fun, but they was putting you on unsupervised for a majority of the time, so I could still do whatever I wanted, right? There's no drug testing, there was no seeing a PO or anything like that. It was just don't get arrested again for the same crime, and we won't send you to jail. So I just kept doing different crimes and getting arrested for different crimes, right? And I would move back to Maryland in the wintertime, and my dad has a framing company, and I would work for him. And me at that age was exactly what he was doing at that age, right? So he sees it. He can read me like a book, right? He's like, there's something wrong with you and all this stuff, right? And he's telling me. But it talks about it in the book for all the emotional uphill, right? Everything that these people are talking to me, I don't care, right? It's in one ear, out the other, carries no depth and weight, nothing whatsoever. Not even a flicker in my brain that they're right, right? I'm 19, 20 years old. I have everything figured out. I have a car. I don't even have car insurance. My cell phone just got shut off. I have no place to live. I'm like sleeping on people's couches and stuff, you know. And I'm working for him. I'm like stealing his tools. I was just not a good person, you know. And me and my brother moved back to the beach one summer. My friend Sean was with me, and we came back to Maryland for just like 3 days. We had a pocket full of money, and we're just going to go back and party, right? I call my mom. My mom does not like me at this point, right? And I call my mom, and I'm just like, hey, we're on our way back. Like, do you care if we crash at your house? She's like, I'm not even there. I said, perfect, right? I said, don't worry about it. We're going to sleep at Sean's house. You know, she's like, okay. I go to her house. I scale the side of her apartment building, and I break into her window. She lives on the 3rd floor, right? And I didn't steal anything. We just ate all of her food and hung out and left trash everywhere and like just freaking dishes in the sink, just not, you know. And there was my brother had this great idea. So me and my friend Sean, we gave my brother all this freaking gas money and stuff, and he spent it all the second he hit freaking Cecil County, right? And he had this bright idea. He was like, let's steal this oil refined hot water boiler out of the basement of this apartment complex. And I'm just like, well, why are we going to steal it? We're going to get like $200 or whatever. He's like, come on, man, just help me. I'm like, all right, fine. So we steal this thing, and I get arrested the following day with like 9 felony charges and all this crazy stuff. And it still wasn't clicking to me, right? Because it talks about that we can't differentiate the true from the false. Like, it was nothing about any of the drugs and alcohol. It had nothing to do with any of that stuff. It was that my brother's an idiot and my mom snitched on us, right? Because we stole it from her apartment complex, right? So the landlord comes, and he's like, oh, what? And he calls the cops. My mom's like, I know exactly where they're at. So she brings them right to the house, right? And my brother had this Honda CRX where we swapped the dashboard out because the VIN numbers would match for his license plate because we couldn't afford new tags or insurance, right? So we swapped this whole dashboard out, all this work for like $80 worth of stuff, you know? I'm just like, this is ridiculous. And I get arrested. I go through the whole court process and stuff, and I end up getting put on 5 years supervised probation, felony probation, and that was my first time being like the actual jail, right? And because my crimes were so high, they put me in maximum security, right? So I'm from outside of Baltimore. So when you go to jail you're there with people from like Baltimore and Washington, D.C. and stuff, which are not pleasant places to be, right? And I'm in this big open dorm with like attempted murderers and stuff. I'm only like 20 years old, and I'm scared to death, right? But I'm saying I'm going to make the best of it. And I didn't even call anybody. And my brother was in the next block over, and he was melting the phone. He was just ringing nonstop, right? Calling people. He got my boss from Ocean City to bail us out. And it was funny because his name's Jerry. He told my brother, he says, the only reason I bailed you out is because I like your little brother. He says, if I had to bail him out, I had to get both of you out, right? And we go through this whole court process, and I ended up getting all the stuff dropped besides like a few things I had to plead out, and I did the 5 years of supervised probation. I probably would have rathered the prison time because it was like being in prison anyway, right? It was just a mental prison so bad because I couldn't do what I wanted to do. Like, I couldn't do certain things, right? Now I could drink like a fish because they don't freaking test for that, right? But all the other stuff, it was terrible, right? And I got drug tested twice a week for 2 years, right? And my probation officer hated me. She said I had to take drug and alcohol classes. And I said, well, how do I get out of that? She says, well, you have to get a drug evaluation done. And if they say you don't have to take it, then you don't have to take it. And I'll let you off of the supervised probation. You could just be unsupervised. You don't even have to see me anymore, Mr. Marks. And I said, okay. So I went to a health department. They said, absolutely, you have to take this class. And I said, well, I'm not taking that answer. So I went to another health department. They said, absolutely, you have to take this. I think I went through 5 or 6 different health departments until I landed at one where it was the psychiatrist was actually out for the day, so the secretary was filling her spot, right? So I'm sitting in this room talking, it's like, I've never done anything. I hadn't even drank before. It's all my brother's fault that I'm in this trouble. And I'm just blowing smoke and all this stuff, right? Using my manipulation skills. And she says, you're not a danger to anybody. You're just a good kid that just happened to do bad things, And I'm just like, okay. Didn't have to do drug and alcohol classes. My probation officer, it was after about 2 years, she let me off of the unsupervised and she let me move out of state. And I moved to West Virginia. I've lived in 5 different states. Everywhere I go, I bring myself, and that's not a good, I think that it's the people, places, and things that I don't believe in that. Absolutely not. Like today, I get to go anywhere in the world, free man. I get to do whatever I want, right? But back then, I couldn't do that because I was bringing myself, and I didn't have a spiritual awakening yet. I didn't experience anything, right? And now where I'm from, Alcoholics Anonymous does not exist. I've never even heard of Alcoholics Anonymous until I came here to Florida. I moved to West Virginia. I was living at my cousin's house. So me and my cousin are the same exact age. I think we're like 3 months apart. Same family, same friends, same upbringing. He is a completely normal person. I talk to him like 3 or 4 times a week. I'm like, oh, what are you doing? He's like, oh, no, I'm just sitting on my couch drinking a beer. He says, yeah, I pick up an 18-pack every Friday and it lasts me all week. I'm like, absolutely not. I'm like, that's crazy, right? I think he's weird, right? When I move in with him, I'm like, you're strange, man. I said, you used to drink a lot with me, but he doesn't want to do it anymore because he has responsibilities like paying bills and a job and like stuff like that. So he doesn't want to do what I do, right? Just like in Bill's story, when he moved to Canada and he got back to a custom living style, his friends asked him to leave. My cousin asked me to leave. He says, absolutely not. You cannot live in my house being the way that you are, right? So I'm like, I'm calling off work. I'm trying to freaking, he lives 1 bedroom over. I'm trying to freaking dodge him for like the rent money, It's like I have nowhere to go, right? And I end up getting a apartment with his dad. Well, his dad's just like me, so it was like a match made in heaven, right? He actually just died last month of this stuff, right? We get an apartment together. I crashed my car probably like 3 months after that. I was driving down the road doing stuff I wasn't supposed to be doing. I had a heart attack. I was like 23 or 24 years old. I crashed into the corner of a restaurant. And I shattered my hip and I broke my femur and like all this stuff. I was in the hospital. And again, I can't differentiate the true from the false. It had nothing to do with all that other stuff. If I just wouldn't have passed out, I would have made it home and I would have been completely fine, right? It has nothing to do with the other stuff. It's just I'm an idiot, right? I'm in the hospital, so because of my injuries, they had to put me into a medically induced coma, right? So I wouldn't move until I went through surgery because all my stuff was so bad. And I wake up and my mom and dad are standing at the end of my bed. I'm like, what are you guys doing here? I'm like, what are you doing, right? And I was so selfish to think that way, right? I'm like, they just drove 8.5 hours to make sure their son's alive. I'm just like, I'm freaking cussing them out. I'm like, sorry, get out of my room and all this stuff. And I'm just being rude and ignorant and I'm just not a good person, man. And I was throwing pillows at the nurses and all this stuff. And I go through surgery. They cut me off all my pain meds and I'm livid, right? And I heard the nurse in the hallway. He's like, if that kid in there don't shut up, I'm going to find the biggest catheter I can find and replace it. Right? And I said, I want to talk to my surgeon right now. And I told my surgeon that, and she said, all right, give me 5 minutes. She comes back. She puts some stuff in me. I pass out. I wake up a day later. I'm in my own private room. They're giving me anything I want, right? They're scared I was going to sue them, right? And it was just, again, manipulation, right? I was using my skills of being a scumbag to get exactly what I wanted, I get out of there. I'm on crutches for like 14 months. I lose my apartment, and everything, my job or whatever. That's all whatever. And I move in with my mom. She's living in Maryland. I move in with her. Now I'm happy, right? Because now she has to take care of me. I can't do dishes. I can't do my laundry. Nothing, right? She has to do all this stuff for me. She has to buy me cigarettes because I smoke cigarettes, right? She has to buy me cigarettes. And my dad's dropping me off weed like 3 or 4 times a week. And like, I'm just like, well, I need beer. And like I'd make my mom go get me beer, right? When I was able to get around on my crutches and stuff, I would go hang out with my friend Sean and stuff, and we would be at the liquor store at like 7 a.m, just waiting for them to open. I'm on crutches. This is terrible. I'm like drinking Fireball. I'm passing out by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And again, it's because I don't like myself very much, and I don't realize this until I get actually sober and I can look back on my past experiences, right? It's just, I'm literally destroying my entire life, and I can't stop, right? Because in the beginning, when I started drinking and all this stuff, like, it was fun. It was cool, man. I had some great experiences that I probably wouldn't trade for the world, right? But as time goes on, when I'm needing this stuff and there is no other choice but to drink, it's like breathing, right? I need to drink. There is no other option, right? It's either that or end my own life or however, right? Like, that's the only other options I can think of, right? And I just continued on, right? I get off my crutches. I move back to West Virginia. I do the same stuff over again. I meet this girl. I get her to move back to Maryland with me. She had a full ride to a private college in West Virginia, and I got her to quit school, quit her job, break her lease, all this stuff, moved to freaking Maryland with me. She was young. She just completely innocent, and I just used the crap out of her, you know, and that didn't last long. I ended up moving back to Ocean City. I got arrested, and I remember I called my mom, and I was like, so in blue states, when you get arrested with certain things, they just let you go. It's like on your own recog, right? Like here, they'll just throw the book at you. Like, you're like the stuff I got arrested for there that I got just released after like an hour. If you get arrested that here, you're like serving like 8 years in prison, right? And I get arrested, and so I got arrested in the state of Delaware. So in Ocean City, it's called 3 Mile Island. So it's 185 blocks, right? And at the end of the 185 blocks is the Delaware-Maryland line. And the cop said, I can't take you into Maryland because it's out of my jurisdiction, but I can drop you off at the line. Well, I lived on Caroline Street, like 4 streets past First Street. So I had to walk all these blocks, right? And I had all this time to think about myself because I got arrested before I can get to my solution, right? And I'm walking and I am just miserable, and I'm calling my mom. And you guys have probably heard, like, you could hook a lie detector test to me. The stuff I was telling my mom was 100% true in that moment. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. Let's just get it over with. I'm just going to move to Florida. I'm going to do whatever you want me to do and this and that, right? She's like, okay. And I call my grandmother. She's like in her 80s. I manipulated her into picking me up and driving me to just across the border into South Carolina to meet my mom so she can come pick me up. While we're in this hotel room, my brain is moving a million mile an hour. I'm contemplating on stealing my 80-some-year-old grandmother's car and driving back to Maryland, right? And that was my best thinking. So my mom picks me up. She's with this girl who's her receptionist at some salon she was working with. And she was like, well, she's in Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, well, what's AA about? And she was like, I said, I'm not an alcoholic. You know, I didn't really think that. And she was trying to explain it to me. And I was like, because in the big book, it says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect, right? And that's what alcohol does to me, right? If I'm sitting in a bar, nothing in the world matters besides the beer in front of me, right? If I'm in a dope hole, nothing outside that closet door matters, right? And that's what I was explaining to this girl. She's like, no, you're an idiot, right? And I'm like, well, because I was blaming it on, well, my dad didn't love me and my mom didn't give me money. And she's like, you're an idiot. Like, that's not it. You just like drinking. You can't stop, right? And I'm just like, wouldn't accept it, right? My mom's like, you have to go to AA. I'm like, okay. So she hooked me up with this guy, Jordan. And he's going to pick me up for this AA meeting. He actually brought me here. This was like 2015. He brought me here. But when he came to pick me up, I was expecting some dude in like a suit. My sponsor told me I'm supposed to be wearing a suit right now, but I'm not wearing a suit. But I was expecting a guy in a suit and like a nice car to pick me up, like a nice responsible guy. He pulls up in like a $500 car, smoking Camel Crushes, like blaring freaking reggae music. And I'm like, okay, man, I could probably like this guy. I'm like, I get in, first thing I say, hey man, can I bum a cigarette? He's like, sure, right? I get a cigarette from him, I come to meetings. I'm in these meetings, I'm freaking falling asleep in my chair. As soon as I leave, I'm going home and smoking and drinking, and I'm doing whatever, right? Because in my mind, that was being sober because I wasn't going to the lengths that I was before, right? And how I explain it to a lot of people is like my cousin, right? He's normal. If you put a brick wall right here and there's alcohol on the other side of it and he can't get to it, he's fine. He's just going to sit on the couch and chill. I'm going to break the wall down. I'm going to do whatever I can. I'm going to find a way over, under, around, whatever, right? My mental obsession is so strong, right? And because I wasn't actually sober, I wasn't doing anything to fix myself and my attitude. My mental obsession was so strong, it was unfathomable, right? I start calling home. I'm manipulating my friends to freaking sell me money so I can get on a plane and go back to Maryland because I wanted to be closer to my solution and my friends and all the people who were doing the same stuff as me because I didn't want to feel so bad about myself, right? I wanted to be surrounded by like-minded individuals, right? And I did. I went back to Maryland. And it talks about in the book that this is repeated over and over again until one can have an entire psychic change, right? I didn't know what that was, right? I didn't know what a psychic change was. And it repeated over and over again through my entire life. I moved back there, moved back here. I doing okay. I'm going to the clinic. I bought a scooter. I paid $1,300 for it, but I couldn't even afford it, so I was freaking financing it for $75 a week, right? And I don't even have a driver's license, and I'm driving the scooter around. I ended up crashing that. I was doing the same thing I was doing when I crashed my car on a scooter on Seven Springs over here and went headfirst into the pavement 50 mile an hour, passed out. And that was just dumb, And again, my obsession is so strong. 3 or 4 days afterwards, so in the meantime, before I crashed my scooter, I ended up buying a kayak because my brother liked to fish. So I'm all right, well, I'll buy a kayak and we'll go fishing and stuff. So 3 days after I crashed the scooter, I don't have a job anymore, right? So I'm trying to load this 12-foot kayak on my scooter sideways like this in between my legs. My freaking legs are straddling the front of this kayak. And I'm I get about a block up the road. This is in Holiday. And I'm just this is dangerous. Right? And I'm this is terrible, man. And I turn around and I get my mom to drive me back. I get my mom to drive me to the pawn shop. And when I get out of the car, she's just go in there and see if they'll sell you a gun to blow your brains out, right? That's the first time my mom said something to me like that. My dad, my entire life, just go kill yourself. It's whatever, man. Just don't come back, whatever. And that's, but when my mom said that to me, it hit a little different. And it was about a couple weeks later. She booted me out of the house. She said it's either detox or homelessness, and I was well, it's Florida. I got $200. I said, I'll just live on the streets, right? And then I lasted about 2 days, and I was all right, let's go to detox. And I ended up in detox. This was Halloween in 2017, I want to say. And I'm in there. I get out. And I come from a very poor family, so my mom had to start a fundraiser to get me into a halfway house. It's only $800, right? And she got all this money together. She put me in a halfway house. I'm there for a week. I get freaking kicked out for getting loaded, right? And when you get kicked out of a halfway house, you don't get your money back, right? So I get freaking booted out. My mom's well, you're on your own, right? And I'm just okay. And I'm living at my mom's. I'm shadow boxing the garage string hanging in the freaking garage. And I'm just doing whatever. I'm just a Looney Tune, man. And she ended up calling the cops on me because I was just out of it. I left probably 10 o'clock in the morning, and then I don't remember the rest of the day. I was blacked out a majority of the day. I came to eating a bowl of chili sitting on her couch to her and her friends sitting in the kitchen at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I'm loaded out of my mind. So I'm this is normal, right? And then I hear the cops knock on the door. I didn't know it was the cops at the time. I answered the door. I'm oh, hi, yeah, how are you? And they're oh, we're here. Are you Josh? And I'm oh, yeah, sure. They're well, your mom is Marchman acting. Do you know what that is? And I'm no, absolutely not. He says, well, you're going to come with us now. And I'm well, and I'm standing there super intoxicated. And I'm just I don't know. And they're well, I'm you let me smoke a cigarette first. I'll make you a deal, right? And he's all right, cool. And I said, all right, I'm smoking a cigarette. I go get in the car. I go to this freaking detox again. I'm in there for and this is all within 30 days. So I was in there for Halloween in 2017, and then I was in there for Thanksgiving of 2017. And the whole time I'm in there, I'm calling my mom. I hate you. I'm saying the worst stuff in the world, right? I'm coming out of my room, detoxing. I'm like, and those doors in detox are like 400 pounds, man. They're like a slab of oak like this. I'm slamming these doors with all my might, man. And these people are like, well, it's Thanksgiving. What are you thankful for? I'm like, absolutely nothing. I'm just flipping out, man. And they're giving me this stuff to calm me down because I'm just losing my mind, because I don't have my solution with me, right? My brain is just million mile an hour. I don't want to exist, right? I get out and I move back into the halfway house, but this time I call my dad and I'm like, hey Dad, I need $175. I just need you to pay for 1 week. He said, absolutely not. He said, sleep on a bench till you make the money. I said, I'm not going to make it that long. He says, well, I don't care, right? So my mom scrounged up another $175. She put me in this halfway house for 1 week. That's all I had, 5 days. And I made it work. I got a job. My original sobriety date was November 25th, 2017. And I lived in this halfway house, man. And I was pretty responsible. I paid my bill. I paid my rent on time every week. I ended up buying a truck for like $900. I had to make payments on it because I couldn't afford the whole $900 at once. I become the halfway house manager of this place, and I think that's what sobriety is, right? And now, up to this point, I've never been truly like any type of dry, sober, whatever you want to call it, for any length of period of time, right? And these guys are coming in this house and they're talking about this phenomenon, craving and allergy and all this stuff. I've never experienced that because I've never been that far away, right? Like more than 24 hours, 48, unless I was in jail, right? But I make it a year. I move out. I actually move into Eric's house. I make it about 30 days. And I didn't want to do AA. I didn't want to go to meetings. I didn't want to sponsor anybody. I didn't want to do any of this stuff. I was like, I'm not an alcoholic, right? And I leave work, and just like the guys in More About Alcoholism, like Fred and them, right? Like they get an idea, and it just instant, like tunnel vision, right? That's what happened to me. I said, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to do this. As soon as I left out of work. And I leave work. I go do that. I go to my girlfriend's house. She knows what I'm doing, and she says, you have to snitch on yourself. You have to call your sponsor. I said, absolutely not. I said, AA has nothing to do with this. This is all me, right? And I did. I had to call my grand sponsor at the time, and I told him, and I told my sponsor the following day. They're all making fun of me, calling me hoo-hoo Smokey and like all this stuff. I work with these guys, right? So like I'm just like, man, I'm like, and again, because I'm not even thinking of anything else besides myself at this entire day. I'm just hating life, man. And within 3 days, I'm getting loaded really the way I want to get loaded, right? Because I was coming up on my 1 year. I was supposed to pick the speaker, and my mom was going to give me my medallion because my ego was like this big. And I was like, my mom's giving me my medallion, right? And I'm just like all this stuff, and like I'm going to show her. And like I didn't get to do that. I had to call those people and tell them, you can't come do this or whatever, right? And the guilt, shame, and remorse. And I ended up getting loaded really the way I want to get loaded. Now, in my opinion, I needed that to happen. I needed my alcoholism to show me that I am truly powerless and I have no other choice but to, right? And I got loaded the following day at 12 o'clock. I went to the nooner at the A Club. I picked up a white chip, and that was November 12th, 2018. And I've been sober ever since. Now the hard stuff happens, right? Now I have to start like making amends and like inventory and all that stuff, right? And like when they talk about these spiritual experiences, like I didn't understand what they're talking about, right? But now that I'm sober a while, I can look back and like every individual step that I'm taking is a small little spiritual experience, right? I do a 4-step. I'm making an inventory of myself and all that stuff. I'm willing to turn my life over to somebody else and get their opinion on how to run my life. Before, absolutely not. Right? But at this point in time, I am super desperate. I had the gift of desperation, right? I had no other choice, right? And I start going through this process. I do my 4th and 5th step. And the first time I did a 4th and 5th step when I was living in that halfway house, my sponsor was like, oh, is there anything you want to leave out? Any dark nooks and crannies of your brain in your past? I'm like, no, I'm good, man. But this time when we did it, I was 100% truthful and honest. I thought that there was stuff that was making me super unique, right? That he was like, I did the same stuff. He says, you're like, who cares, right? And I love my sponsorship family because they're very honest and open-minded, right? And they'll tell me when I'm being an idiot, when I'm wrong, and I'm like, because I think I can run the world, right? But I can't, and they'll tell me that, right? I stay sober for about 9 months. I'm working at the same landscape company, and my dad calls me. He says, hey, I'm going to build this big house. He says, I don't have any foremen. I need somebody to come help, right? And this is back in Maryland. And I talked to my grand sponsor about it. He says, do whatever you want, man. I don't care. And I go back, and I stay sober, right? I'm done my steps. I was sponsoring people before I left, and that's what's great about the AA in Newport Richie and stuff is it's just surrounded by Alcoholics Anonymous. When you find your group, you're just surrounded by it, right? And I moved back there. I'm talking to those guys still every day. Like every day on my way home from work, I'm giving them a call. My sponsor, my grand sponsor, I'm talking to everybody, doing the deal right, going to meetings. Meetings are very different there. I didn't like them very much. I was watching a lot of speaker tapes on YouTube and stuff, and just staying in touch with my group because I didn't want to get too in depth because I knew I was coming back here in 3 months, right? Because I was only going there for 3 months. And the cool thing is like in the 10-step, it talks about that we're freed from this obsession, right? And like I was talking about earlier, that I get to go anywhere in the world a free man. I don't have to worry about nothing, right? I don't have to look over my shoulder, none of this stuff, right? I moved back. I'm going to parties. I'm hanging out at the same places. I'm hanging out with my sister that's not sober at the time. Her boyfriend's not sober. And what's cool is when I was making my amends list, there was a guy on my resentment list, which was my sister's boyfriend at the time, and he was probably the only person in this world I had a bullet for. Hated him, right? I went back, I made a amends to him, right? And it talks about that resentments of years will just be gone, right? Me and him had a conversation. We became best friends. We hung out I talk to him still today, right? We hung out all the time. The whole summer I was there. It was cool stuff, man. And I wasn't full of anger and just hate all the time and just miserable, right? Like I'm just walking around holding my breath 24/7, like I was pretty free. I was able to save some money. I came back here. I went back to work for that same landscaping company. I worked there for like 3 or 4 more years. And I ended up meeting my wife in AA. And we ended up getting married not too long, like probably 2-3 years ago. We got married. We have kids and stuff now. I was able to purchase my first home. Now, being sober isn't all rainbows and horseshoes, right? It's not at all, right? I've had some pretty miserable moments, right, in myself being sober, right? Like, I made some amends, and like that guy, Pat, I made amends to him. There was one amends on my list that I did not want to make, and it was to the state of Delaware. So when I got arrested all those years ago, right, I ran. I never went back. I never went to my court date, nothing, right? I had an open warrant for my arrest for 8 years, right? And my sponsor and all them were like, you have to do it. I'm like, well, in the loophole in the book, it says that if I harm anyone or anybody else, right? So my boss is going to lose his number one employee. My wife is going to lose her rent, her freaking half of rent money. And I'm like using that as an advantage to not do it, right? But I'm at work one day and I'm in Land O'Lakes in freaking Bexley cutting grass. And I'm just like, I'm actually looking for another job, right? And it lit a fire under my butt that I couldn't have an open warrant to get the job that I wanted, right? So I end up, and it's all fear driven. It talks about in the big book that fear is the stem of 1 million spiritual diseases, right? It'll kill you, right? And I ended up calling the state of Delaware. First, I just started calling around to like police stations. It was like, hey, my name's that. I'll be like, well, just come talk to us, right? And I'm just like, I'm probably wouldn't do that even if I was down the street, but I'm like 5 states away, right? I'm like, I'm not just coming in there, right? And they're like, I ended up talking to some secretary at a courthouse. I said, can you put me on the phone with the person who would put me in prison? She says, absolutely. Give me about 20 minutes, right? And this guy calls me back, and it's the state's attorney, right? Which I didn't think that they talk to people, right? And he calls me, and he's like, And I'm telling him all this stuff, that I'm getting married and I'm trying to get this better job. I'm about to buy a house and all this stuff. He's like, how do I believe you? I said, well, what do you need me to do? He says, would you come here? And I was like, absolutely, right? Because I was on the phone with him and the fear was slowly being lifted because I was going through this action of this ordeal, right? And he says, well, why don't you call back tomorrow at 3 and check on your status, right? So following day, I called back at 3 and it was gone. Like they didn't even have me in the system. I disappeared, right? And I was like, that's crazy, right? So now I got the transfer jobs, right? And I don't have any amends left. I cleared up pretty much 99% of them other than living amends. Because, like, obviously I owe my dad, like, probably tens of thousands of dollars. He's like, yo, just stay sober, you know? I'm like, all right, cool. I got out of that one, right? Same thing with my mom. Like, my brother, I was like, hey, I stole your car that one time and I got a red light ticket and your license got took in and all that stuff. You know, do you remember that? And he says, yeah, you owe me like $400. And I'm like, oh man, I thought he was going to tell me, oh, just stay sober, right? He was like, absolutely not. He says, I want my $400. And I'm like, all right. So I clear up all that stuff, man. Even ex-girlfriend, I remember I was going to a Westminster group in Newport Richey. And I would show up and I'm like, Seth, man, yo, freaking check out these Air Maxes I'm going to buy tomorrow. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, you owe your ex-girlfriend like $800. I'm like, well, I work hard for this stuff, man. I deserve new shoes. He says, no, you don't. And he says, so that night he made me, I tried contacting her. She wouldn't talk to me. She would talk to me over like the Facebook Messenger and stuff. And I was able to set up a payment plan with her. I just started giving her $200 or $300 at a time, and I ended up paying her off. And then I was like, no, I'm freaking now all my amends are done, right? And life gets pretty good. You know, I in that house that I bought, I almost chopped my hand off with freaking a chop saw on purpose because I'm just miserable, right? I'm trying to put this flooring in my kitchen, and I can't do it. And I snap. I'm very explosive. And if I'm by myself, it's worse. Like, I don't explode around people, right? But if I'm by myself, like in my house, and like I could drop like a bowl of cereal, dude, all hell's breaking loose. I'm flipping my couch. And it was this stupid minuscule stuff like that, man, that just made, like, I'm just going to chop my hand off. And I was like, that's my best alcoholic thinking when I'm by myself. And that's not a joke. Like, I was sitting in my garage, freaking chain smoking cigarettes, like, if I chop my hand off, either A, I don't ever have to do flooring again, or B, I just won't live and I'll never have to do flooring again, right? And I've experienced that a few times through my course of sobriety, you know, like last year, right? I sold that house and I was buying a new house in Brooksville. So this used to be my home group. I came here for like 8 years. I just moved to Brooksville. In that process of selling that house, I should have been the happiest person in the world. I was freaking miserable. I was coming to meetings. I was doing fifth steps. I was sponsoring guys and all that stuff, right? But in the big book, it talks about if we don't grow along spiritual guidelines, we're going to die, right? And that I wasn't doing that part, right? Wasn't doing any of that. I was sponsoring guys. I was going to meetings. I was calling, talking to people, but I was not like praying. I wasn't like actually turning my will over and all that stuff, you know? I almost drank, right? But I didn't. I was able to talk to my sponsor about it and all that good stuff, man. And I was able to work through that process, you know. And I love Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I love that I moved to Brooksville because now I have to actually rely on spiritualness in my sobriety because I'm not so surrounded by Alcoholics Anonymous, which I think is beautiful. That was a spiritual experience, in my opinion, when I got to experience that, right? I have 2 beautiful daughters. I have one who's 2.5. She's a little bit of an a-hole. I have one that's 6 months old, and she is perfect. She sleeps all night since day one. Not a resentment towards her at all. Right? My other one, it's Band-Aids, popsicles, boo-boos, kiss this, freaking read this book, all this stuff, man. But I get to walk through that with grace, and my wife's an Alcoholics Anonymous, so me and her get to work through this in grace, right? And all this stuff, right? And it's beautiful. Alcoholics Anonymous does exactly for me that drugs and alcohol did for me. It replaced the solution. So when I'm going through a hard time, now I should be practicing this stuff like 99% of my life, right? But a lot of people use it as like a foxhole deal, right? when life gets bad, start doing a 10 step, start praying every morning, and it works, right? It's just like when life gets bad, when I'm out there, I drink a beer, right? Same concept to me. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, so that's all I got. Thank you very much.